Here's the truth. If you don't have emotional intelligence, no amount of knowledge, skill, or ambition will make you truly unstoppable. You might achieve small victories. You might even build short bursts of success, but without the ability to master your emotions, to understand others, and to stay centered when life tests you, everything you build stands on shaky ground. Emotional intelligence isn't a soft trait. It's the silent force that shapes leadership, influence, and long-term success. Picture this. Two people stand at the edge of a challenge. Both are smart, both capable, both hungry for success. The first one pushes hard, driven by ego and fear. When obstacles appear, frustration rises, and soon doubt begins to whisper, "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." The second person breathes. They feel the same tension, the same uncertainty, but they don't fight it. They observe it. They listen to it. Then, from that place of calm awareness, they act with clarity. One burns out, the other builds momentum. That difference isn't luck. It's emotional intelligence in motion. Every business interaction, every meeting, every negotiation, every moment of conflict is shaped more by emotion than by logic. People buy because of how they feel. They follow leaders who make them feel valued. They stay loyal to those who make them feel safe. Emotional intelligence allows you to read those invisible dynamics, to sense the temperature of a room, to understand what people need even before they say it. When you master that, you become magnetic. The journey of emotional intelligence begins with awareness. You cannot change what you don't notice. Most people live in reaction, snapping at stress, defending their pride, rushing through decisions without realizing what drives them. Awareness invites you to pause. It asks, what am I really feeling right now? Why? The moment you ask that question, you step out of autopilot and into consciousness. You begin to see yourself not as the emotion, but as the observer behind it. When you start paying attention, patterns appear. You'll notice that criticism triggers anger, not because you hate feedback, but because deep down you fear inadequacy. You'll notice that praise makes you uneasy, not because you're humble, but because you doubt whether you truly deserve it. Awareness reveals the stories beneath your emotions, and once you see the story, you can rewrite it. Imagine walking into a tense meeting where opinions clash. Without awareness, you react, raising your voice, pushing harder, trying to win. With awareness, you sense your tension, breathe through it, and listen more deeply. You realize that the person opposing you isn't your enemy. They're afraid their voice won't matter. So instead of dominating, you include them. Suddenly the energy in the room shifts. The walls fall, progress begins. That is the invisible magic of awareness. It transforms chaos into clarity. But awareness alone isn't mastery. The next step is self-regulation, the ability to manage your emotions instead of letting them manage you. Self-regulation is the pause between stimulus and response. It's what allows you to stay calm when others lose control, to think clearly when pressure builds, to respond wisely instead of reacting impulsively. In the world of business, where deadlines, competition, and egos collide, emotional control is your greatest edge. Picture a leader who explodes at every setback versus one who remains composed even in crisis. Who would you trust? Who would you follow? The calm leader inspires confidence because their presence says, I am in control, not of the world, but of myself. Self-regulation isn't suppression, it's transformation. Suppression buries emotions, regulation guides them. When anger arises, instead of denying it, you breathe, acknowledge it, and channel it into assertive communication. When fear whispers, you listen, but you don't let it drive. You turn fear into focus. When excitement floods you, you use it for enthusiasm, not recklessness. That is true mastery, energy under direction. And yet, no emotional intelligence journey is complete without empathy. Empathy is the bridge between minds. It's the ability to stand in another's experience without losing yourself. In business, empathy changes everything. It turns competition into collaboration, customers into advocates, and employees into believers. People may forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel. Empathy starts with listening, not hearing words, but sensing emotions. It's recognizing that beneath every complaint lies a concern, beneath every resistance lies fear, and beneath every silence lies a story untold. When you listen with empathy, you invite truth. You create a space where others can drop their masks, and when people feel safe, they reveal their best selves. Imagine leading a team where individuals feel genuinely understood. Conflicts still arise, but they no longer divide, they refine. Ideas flourish because people trust one another. That's not luck or good management. That's emotional intelligence woven into culture. To build empathy, you must first slow down. Rushing blinds you to emotional cues. True connection happens in presence, eye contact, attentive silence, curiosity. When you ask, "What do you need?" and mean it, walls crumble. The deeper you cultivate awareness, regulation, and empathy, the more you access resilience, the quiet strength that keeps you steady when life tests you. Resilience doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you don't let pain define you. It's the wisdom to see setbacks as detours, not dead ends. Think of emotional intelligence as a compass. Awareness tells you where you are. Regulation keeps you steady on the path. Empathy connects you to fellow travelers, and resilience keeps you moving when the terrain gets rough. With those four working together, you become unshakable. In every challenge, your emotions will try to claim control. Fear will say, "Run." Anger will shout, "Fight." Doubt will whisper, "Give up." But your intelligence, your emotional intelligence will remind you, "Breathe, listen, learn." This doesn't happen overnight. Emotional mastery is a lifelong discipline. You grow each time you pause instead of react, each time you forgive instead of resent, each time you choose curiosity over judgment. Over time, you realize that peace is not found in avoiding emotion, but in understanding it. And as you grow, something shifts. The things that used to trigger you lose their power. The situations that once overwhelmed you become opportunities to practice calmness. You begin to lead with steadiness. You notice more. You speak less. And when you do speak, people listen, because your words now come from stillness, not from noise. That is the energy of someone who is emotionally intelligent. It's magnetic, grounding, and trustworthy. You become the person others look to in uncertainty, the calm presence in the storm. As your emotional intelligence matures, you begin to realize that success in business is less about competing with others and more about mastering yourself. The real battlefield isn't the marketplace. It's your inner landscape. Every doubt, every burst of impatience, every moment of insecurity is a test of emotional clarity. The leaders who rise above aren't those who have no fear or anger. They're those who've learned to work with them rather than against them. Think of your emotions as signals, not enemies. Anger is the signal that a boundary has been crossed. Fear warns of uncertainty or unpreparedness. Sadness reminds you that something meaningful has been lost. Joy points you toward alignment. Each emotion carries data, but when you suppress them, you lose access to that data. And when you let them run wild, they distort it. Emotional intelligence means learning to decode, not deny. The best entrepreneurs and business thinkers know this well. They've trained their emotions to serve strategy. They don't make big decisions when overwhelmed. They pause until clarity returns. They don't internalize rejection. They mine it for lessons. They don't chase validation. They focus on purpose, and because they stay emotionally balanced, they make better long-term choices. In your own journey, you'll encounter moments that test every ounce of your calm. A client might cancel last minute. A colleague may take credit for your work. Someone you trusted might disappoint you deeply. These moments can ignite frustration or despair. But in that flash of reaction lies your power. Do you feed the fire or do you cool it with understanding? Emotional intelligence teaches you to respond instead of react. Reaction is immediate and fueled by ego. Response is measured and fueled by wisdom. When you respond, you act from choice rather than compulsion. You take ownership of your energy, and that ownership is the foundation of influence. People can sense when you are emotionally grounded. It's in your tone, your timing, your patience. You become the person who doesn't panic when others do. You become trusted, respected, followed. Imagine walking into a negotiation. The stakes are high. Tension thickens the air. Most people, consumed by pressure, talk fast, push harder, and lose connection. But you, calm and centered, observe the subtle cues, the nervous glance, the tightened jaw, the hesitation before agreement. You don't rush to fill silence. You use it. You ask one thoughtful question that pierces the surface and reveals the truth behind the numbers. Suddenly, the energy changes. Because while everyone else was fighting for advantage, you were seeking understanding. That's the hidden advantage of emotional intelligence. It gives you insight into the human current beneath every interaction. When you understand emotion, you understand behavior. When you understand behavior, you understand influence. And when you understand influence, you become unstoppable in business. But emotional intelligence isn't only about managing others. It's also about self-compassion, the ability to treat yourself with the same understanding you offer others. Many driven people are harsh toward themselves. They set impossible standards, berate themselves for mistakes, and tie their worth to performance. Yet emotional maturity means realizing that growth requires grace. When you fail, the emotional response is disappointment. The intelligent response is curiosity. What is this moment trying to teach me? Failure, when examined with compassion, becomes data. It loses its sting. You begin to see that your worth isn't diminished by setbacks. It's deepened by them. Self-compassion doesn't make you weak. It makes you resilient. Because instead of wasting energy on guilt and shame, you redirect it toward learning and rebuilding. You treat yourself as an evolving project rather than a broken one. In business, that shift changes everything. You stop hiding mistakes and start learning faster. You become more open to feedback because your identity isn't fragile. You can handle criticism without crumbling because you understand that it's not an attack on your value, but an invitation to grow. With time, this emotional steadiness becomes your signature. Clients notice it. Teams feel it. Partners rely on it. You radiate a sense of quiet assurance that says, no matter what happens, I remain centered. And from that center, emotional intelligence transforms into presence. That rare quality that makes someone memorable the moment they walk into a room. Presence isn't about charisma or loud confidence. It's the subtle magnetism that comes from being fully here, grounded, listening, aware. You're not distracted by self-doubt or future anxiety. You're engaged in this exact moment. People can feel presence. It makes them relax. It opens their minds. In a world overflowing with noise, presence is power. But presence requires inner stillness, and stillness grows from self-awareness. This is why emotionally intelligent people cultivate reflection. They spend time alone, not scrolling, not escaping, but listening inwardly. They ask themselves questions others avoid. What patterns keep repeating in my life? What triggers me and why? What do I need to heal, not just hide? This kind of self-inquiry sharpens perception. The more you understand your emotional landscape, the less you're surprised by it. When stress hits, you know how to ground yourself. When doubt arises, you recognize the voice, but no longer obey it. This doesn't mean you'll never feel emotional turbulence again. It means you'll learn to sail through it. Calm seas don't make skilled sailors, storms do. Every obstacle in business becomes a test of emotional endurance. A delayed deal tests your patience. A failed launch tests your self-worth. A disagreement tests your humility. The people who rise aren't those with the fewest challenges, but those with the calmest response to them. Let's imagine you've been working for months on a new project. You've invested energy, money, and late nights into it. Then, unexpectedly, it collapses. The data wasn't right, or the market shifted. Most people spiral: anger, blame, self-doubt. But emotional intelligence gives you another option. Pause, breathe, observe. Feel the disappointment fully, but don't let it define you. Step back and ask, what is this trying to reveal? Maybe you learned more about your market, your limits, or your resilience. The loss becomes wisdom. In that mindset, nothing is wasted. When emotional intelligence becomes your lifestyle, you stop fighting emotions and start using them as guidance. Anxiety becomes preparation. Sadness becomes reflection. Excitement becomes vision. Every feeling becomes feedback. This makes you not only a better professional, but a more centered human being. Because business, at its core, is a mirror of humanity. A web of relationships, communication, and trust. And trust is built on emotional understanding. Now let's talk about communication. Because emotional intelligence isn't complete until it expresses itself through words and tone. Every emotionally intelligent communicator knows that how you say something matters more than what you say. Your tone carries your emotional energy. It tells people whether to open or close, to listen or defend. When you speak with calm authority, people feel safe. When you speak with empathy, people feel seen. When you speak with authenticity, people feel inspired. The emotionally intelligent communicator listens before responding. They notice the emotion behind the words, the hesitation, the frustration, the longing. They tailor their response not to impress, but to connect. That's why their words carry weight. In the fast-paced world of business, where emails fly and meetings blur together, emotional communication is your secret differentiator. Anyone can send information. Few can send feeling, and feeling is what people remember. Think of your favorite mentors, leaders, or colleagues. What drew you to them wasn't only intellect, it was energy. They carried warmth, composure, and clarity. They made you feel capable. That's the heart of emotional influence. The next layer of emotional intelligence is adaptability. Your ability to stay flexible in changing circumstances. Business moves fast. Markets evolve, teams shift, and plans fail. Emotional rigidity breaks under pressure. Flexibility bends and survives. Adaptability is emotional agility, the willingness to change direction without losing focus. Emotionally agile people don't get stuck in disappointment when things shift. They don't say this shouldn't have happened. Instead they say, this happened. Now what? That mindset keeps them moving forward. Adaptability is built through perspective. When you see challenges as experiments rather than catastrophes, your stress lessens. You stop personalizing failure. You start playing long-term games. Soon you begin to notice a transformation. Your confidence no longer depends on circumstances. It flows from within. Wins excite you but don't inflate you. Losses sting but don't break you. You become emotionally balanced, and balance is the essence of emotional mastery. It's not that you never tilt, it's that you always return to center. Over time, people will sense that about you. You'll walk into rooms and your calmness will steady others. You'll handle crises and others will follow your tone. You'll build connections that outlast transactions. Because emotional intelligence, when lived fully, becomes emotional leadership. And leadership isn't about hierarchy, it's about energy. It's about being the person who elevates others by being emotionally clear, compassionate, and strong. This is where the unstoppable part begins. When you master your emotions, the world no longer dictates your mood or your worth. You lead from within. Stress becomes information. Criticism becomes refinement. Success becomes gratitude, not ego. That's when your business grows naturally, because people are drawn to your steadiness, your integrity, your peace. You no longer chase opportunities, they gravitate toward you. You become a force, not loud, not aggressive, but quietly unshakable. And that's what emotional intelligence truly is, the art of remaining deeply human while walking boldly in ambition. There comes a moment in every professional's journey when the outer noise grows louder than the inner voice. Expectations pile up, targets loom, and the world demands results faster than the heart can process. It's here, in this tension between doing and being, that emotional intelligence either falters or flourishes. The emotionally intelligent person learns to slow down without losing momentum. They understand that silence can be strategy, reflection can be productivity. The pause between actions is not wasted time. It's the sacred space where clarity is born. In a culture obsessed with speed, calm becomes your competitive edge. When others rush into chaos, you observe patterns. When others react to pressure, you realign. When others burn out, you breathe deeper. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not aggression, but awareness. The most resilient business minds aren't those who fight the hardest, they're those who listen the deepest. They listen to their bodies when fatigue whispers. They listen to their intuition when logic is uncertain. They listen to others, even those who disagree, because they know that every perspective contains a fragment of truth. Listening, in its truest form, is a spiritual act. It's how you honor reality before attempting to change it. It's how you gather emotional data before forming strategy. A leader who listens deeply leads wisely. Imagine a boardroom where tensions rise, voices overlap, ideas clash. The room hums with frustration. Then someone simply leans back, takes a breath, and says, "Let's pause for a moment." In that instant, energy shifts. Everyone exhales. That pause, small yet powerful, comes from emotional intelligence. It's the ability to sense when momentum needs stillness, when heat needs air. And that one person, the calm one, becomes the anchor. Others unconsciously turn toward them. Because calmness is contagious, you can cultivate this presence through practice. Start by catching yourself in moments of emotional heat. When anger flares, take a deep breath through your nose, feel it travel down your chest, and exhale slowly. When anxiety swells, ground yourself by noticing 3 things you can see, 2 you can touch, and 1 you can hear. These tiny practices retrain your nervous system. Over time, emotional regulation becomes instinctive. But let's go deeper. Emotional intelligence isn't merely a professional skill, it's an act of personal transformation. It demands honesty, the kind that feels uncomfortable. It asks you to face your triggers, your wounds, your patterns. It invites you to stop blaming others and start observing yourself. You begin to ask, why do certain people irritate me so easily? Why do I fear failure more than I admit? Why do I need validation to feel worthy? Every answer leads to freedom, because when you see yourself clearly, your emotions lose control over you. You stop being reactive. You become responsive. You start designing your emotional world instead of being a product of it. The greatest professionals are emotional architects. They don't wait for peace, they build it. They don't wait for motivation, they cultivate it. They don't wait for trust, they embody it. Let's visualize this through a story. Picture a young entrepreneur named Lena. She had the vision, the intelligence, and the drive. But whenever she faced rejection, she spiraled into self-doubt. One investor's no would paralyze her for weeks. Her business suffered, not because her idea was weak, but because her emotions were untrained. One evening, after losing a major deal, Lena sat in silence. Instead of distracting herself, she asked, "Why does this hurt so much?" The answer surfaced, because deep down, she tied rejection to unworthiness. That night, she wrote herself a promise to separate results from identity. Months later, another rejection came. It still stung, but she no longer broke down. She observed her emotion, learned from it, and moved forward. That emotional shift changed everything. Investors began to notice her resilience. Clients began to trust her consistency. The same person, the same skills, but a new emotional framework. Lena's story isn't unique. It's the story of anyone who has chosen to master the inner world before conquering the outer one. And that mastery starts with awareness. Awareness is the flashlight that reveals your hidden motivations, your suppressed fears, and your unconscious habits. Without it, you operate on autopilot. With it, you operate with purpose. Here's a simple but powerful truth. Emotional intelligence is not about controlling emotions, it's about understanding them. You cannot control what you don't understand, but when you understand your emotions, they stop controlling you. Let's reflect on how this applies to business dynamics. When you lead a team, emotions ripple through the group like energy currents. A leader's tone sets the atmosphere. If you're anxious, others will mirror it. If you're composed, others will find grounding. You can't demand calm, you must embody it. That's emotional contagion. The emotionally intelligent leader uses this wisely. Before important meetings, they check their internal state. They breathe, center themselves, and ask, what energy do I want to bring into this room? They speak not to impress, but to align. They correct without humiliating, guide without dominating. When conflict arises, they don't rush to win arguments. They aim to restore connection. They know that behind every disagreement lies a deeper unmet need, a fear of not being heard, a desire for respect, a struggle for recognition. When you address that root, problems dissolve faster. In negotiation, emotional intelligence becomes your sharpest instrument. While others chase logical advantage, you read emotional patterns. You notice when someone hesitates, that tiny flicker of doubt, and adjust your approach. You understand that persuasion is not about pressure, but alignment. And when you understand alignment, manipulation becomes unnecessary. Authenticity wins more deals than tactics ever will, because people sense sincerity instinctively. They may forget your words, but they remember how you made them feel. That's why every emotionally intelligent entrepreneur radiates warmth. They are ambitious, yes, but they never lose compassion. They compete fiercely, but never cruelly. Their success feels expansive, not extractive. People leave interactions with them feeling uplifted, not drained. This is the essence of emotional magnetism, the invisible force that draws clients, collaborators, and opportunities toward you. It's not luck, it's vibration. You attract at the level of your emotional frequency. To raise that frequency, practice gratitude. Gratitude softens tension. It reminds you that abundance doesn't come from scarcity, but from appreciation. Each day, take a moment to acknowledge something simple, the lesson learned from a failure, the kindness of a colleague, the courage it took to try again. Gratitude is emotional alchemy. It turns frustration into perspective, and scarcity into peace. In business, gratitude cultivates loyalty. When you genuinely appreciate your team, they give their best. When you thank a client with sincerity, they remember you long after the transaction ends. Gratitude humanizes commerce. But gratitude alone isn't enough. It must be paired with emotional boundaries. Emotionally intelligent people know how to give without depleting themselves. They help, but they don't rescue. They care, but they don't carry everyone's burdens. In your journey, you'll encounter emotional takers, people who drain your energy with constant negativity or manipulation. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's clarity. It's saying, I can love you and still protect my peace. Boundaries preserve emotional energy, and energy is your most valuable business currency. Without it, even genius fails. With it, even average ideas thrive. As your emotional intelligence strengthens, you begin to notice subtle miracles. You find yourself handling stress with grace. You navigate difficult people with patience. You recover from setbacks faster. Life doesn't get easier, but you get lighter. And people will ask, how do you stay so calm under pressure? You'll smile because you know it's not luck, it's practice. One day you'll realize that emotional intelligence has reshaped your entire experience of success. You'll no longer chase validation. You'll no longer fear imperfection. You'll work with joy, lead with heart, and rest with peace. Your ambition will feel less like hunger and more like purpose. Because emotional intelligence is not just a professional edge, it's a spiritual awakening, disguised as a skill. It teaches you to lead others by first leading yourself. It teaches you that real success is measured not only in profit but in peace. You'll begin to redefine what being unstoppable truly means. It's not about never falling, it's about rising without bitterness. It's not about being louder, it's about being clearer. It's not about domination, it's about direction. The emotionally intelligent professional moves through life with soft power, influence rooted in understanding, not control. They don't need to prove their worth, because they live it. They don't need to chase attention, because they command it naturally. And in this calm certainty, something beautiful happens. Business becomes an expression of who you are, not a battle to win approval. When emotional intelligence becomes your way of being, you discover that your outer world mirrors your inner peace. Clients become friends. Competitors become collaborators. Challenges become teachers. Success becomes inevitable, not because you're perfect, but because you're aligned. So pause for a moment now, wherever you are, and take a slow, mindful breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Remember this truth: your emotions are not your enemies, they are your compass. When you master reading that compass, you no longer wander through business blind, you navigate with grace, confidence, and clarity. That is the secret of being unstoppable. There comes a point in emotional growth where awareness becomes wisdom, and wisdom becomes quiet strength. By now, you've learned to recognize your emotions, manage them, and see their reflections in others. But the next level of mastery, the level that truly makes you unstoppable, is emotional alignment, when your inner world and outer actions move in perfect rhythm. Emotional alignment means living from your values, not your moods. It means making choices guided by intention, rather than impulse. In business, this kind of alignment transforms chaos into clarity. You stop chasing opportunities that don't resonate with your deeper purpose. You stop forcing outcomes that are not ready to unfold. You begin to move from a place of trust, not just in the process, but in yourself. Every emotionally intelligent professional eventually realizes this truth. Success without inner harmony feels empty. The car, the house, the applause, they can't fill the quiet spaces where peace should live. Emotional alignment gives meaning to ambition. It reminds you that prosperity without purpose is simply pressure dressed as achievement. So how do you reach this level of alignment? It starts with honesty, not the polite kind we offer others, but the raw kind we owe ourselves. You ask, am I building something that truly reflects me, or am I building something just to be seen? That question alone has the power to reshape your destiny. When your business decisions spring from ego, they often create short-lived satisfaction and long-term fatigue. But when your decisions come from emotional clarity, they create long-term fulfillment. You begin to trust timing. You start saying no to things that distract you from your vision, even if they look tempting. You stop comparing your path to others. You learn to value peace over pressure. And slowly you become the kind of person who radiates calm certainty. You no longer rush to prove. You no longer panic when things slow down, because you've realized that calm isn't the opposite of progress. It's the foundation of it. The emotionally aligned person knows that the quality of their inner state determines the quality of their results. They check in with themselves daily, not just their schedule, but their spirit. Before diving into tasks, they ask, what energy am I bringing into this day? Because they know that unchecked emotions can silently sabotage great plans. If you begin your day with resentment, your communication will carry a sharp edge. If you begin it with gratitude, your tone will soften and opportunities will respond. Energy precedes outcomes. So as you continue growing in emotional intelligence, learn to protect your mornings. Don't rush into screens or meetings before you've aligned yourself internally. Spend a few minutes in silence, breathe, journal, reflect. Ask yourself, what do I want to create emotionally today? This simple ritual will anchor your day, because when your emotions start from calm, everything that follows carries that vibration. But alignment doesn't mean perfection, it means awareness. There will be days when frustration wins, when you lose your cool, or doubt yourself, or feel the weight of it all. Emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing those moments, it's about recovering faster. Recovery is emotional fitness. The quicker you return to balance after disruption, the stronger you are. Some people spend weeks stuck in resentment or worry. The emotionally fit person feels the sting, processes it, and moves on. They understand that holding on to emotional pain is like keeping broken glass in your pocket. It only hurts you. And this recovery skill becomes invaluable in business. Deals fall through, clients ghost, partners disappoint. The emotionally untrained mind spirals, but the emotionally intelligent one breathes, evaluates, and adapts. They don't take rejection personally, because they know it's rarely about them. It's about timing, readiness, or alignment. Here's something powerful. Every no carries hidden wisdom. Sometimes it redirects you to a better yes. Sometimes it teaches patience. Sometimes it reveals an aspect of yourself that needed refinement. When you shift from resistance to reflection, you gain emotional leverage. And that leverage, the ability to stay grounded while learning from disappointment, becomes your greatest business asset. Think of emotional intelligence as the art of emotional recycling. You take fear and turn it into courage. You take frustration and turn it into focus. You take rejection and turn it into redirection. Nothing is wasted. To reach this level, you need to cultivate emotional rituals that recharge you. For some, it's morning walks. For others, it's prayer, journaling, or stillness. Whatever grounds you, protect it fiercely. Your mind is your greatest business partner, and your emotions are its language. The clearer the communication, the better the results. At this stage, emotional intelligence also begins to merge with intuition. You start sensing what feels right, not just logically, but emotionally. Intuition is emotional data accumulated over time. It's your subconscious pattern recognition speaking through feeling. When you've learned to listen to that voice, you no longer second-guess every decision. You begin to trust your instincts, because they're no longer clouded by fear. And the beauty of emotionally intelligent intuition is that it doesn't rush. It waits for clarity, then moves decisively. Let's pause here and breathe into this idea. You don't need to know everything to move forward. You just need to feel centered enough to take the next step with peace. That is what emotional alignment feels like. Quiet certainty in motion. You stop chasing validation and start chasing authenticity. You stop trying to impress people who aren't even aligned with your purpose. You begin to attract relationships that match your emotional frequency. People who understand your calmness, not as passivity, but as power. And that's when emotional intelligence becomes magnetic. It stops being something you do and becomes something you are. When your emotional life reaches this level of calm power, something subtle but profound begins to happen. You start influencing people without trying. Your presence itself begins to speak. People sense the peace in you before you say a word. They start coming to you for clarity, for reassurance, for grounding. That's the quiet mark of an emotionally intelligent leader. They radiate steadiness in a world addicted to reaction. The world doesn't reward the loudest voice, it rewards the most centered one. When chaos erupts, people look for those who don't shake. When confusion spreads, they follow those who think clearly, under pressure. That's the real currency of leadership, emotional stability. And that's why emotional intelligence is not just about understanding emotions, it's about mastering your state, because your state determines your strategy. If you're reactive, you make emotional decisions that cost you peace, relationships, and opportunities. But if you're centered, You make grounded decisions that multiply your influence. The best entrepreneurs, mentors, and communicators are not those who never feel fear, anger, or doubt. They're the ones who don't let those emotions dictate their direction. They feel everything deeply, but act wisely. There's a quiet power in emotional restraint. Not suppression, restraint. Suppression hides, restraint channels. When you restrain yourself, you take that emotional charge and redirect it toward productive energy. Instead of shouting back in anger, you turn that fire into clarity and action. Instead of panicking in loss, you turn that pain into strategy. That's how emotionally intelligent people rise. They transform emotion into motion. And that transformation is what sets them apart in a competitive world. While others waste time reacting, they invest time reflecting. They don't just respond to the world, they reshape it from within. Every emotionally mature person learns that the most dangerous battles are internal. It's not the economy, the competition, or the critics that break most people. It's the inner noise they never learn to silence. The emotionally intelligent individual becomes a master at managing this inner noise. They recognize when their thoughts spiral. They catch themselves before anger becomes bitterness, before fear becomes paralysis, before doubt becomes surrender. They pause, they breathe. They question their emotions instead of being ruled by them. Is this feeling true, or just temporary? Is this reaction useful, or just familiar? Am I acting from peace, or from pain? Those questions act like emotional brakes, preventing you from driving your life off course. This is how self-awareness evolves into self-regulation. You don't need the world to calm down for you to feel okay. You become your own peace. You bring the calm with you everywhere you go, to meetings, to relationships, to solitude. And because of that calm, people trust you. Trust, after all, is the invisible thread that binds all human interaction. In business, it's worth more than capital. In relationships, it's worth more than love alone. Because without trust, love feels unsafe. Without trust, money feels meaningless. Emotional intelligence helps you build trust through consistency. You say what you mean what you say, and your emotions don't change your integrity. When you speak calmly, even under pressure, people sense that your word is anchored in character, not in convenience. That kind of person becomes rare, and therefore valuable. But here's something deeper. Emotional intelligence also teaches you when not to speak. Silence can be strategy. Some of the most powerful moments in human communication happen in pauses, in the spaces between words, when your presence says more than your explanation ever could. Emotionally intelligent people know when silence carries more truth than sound. They don't rush to fill every gap, defend every point, or prove every opinion. They've learned that emotional maturity isn't about winning arguments, it's about keeping peace. And this peace doesn't mean passivity, it's strength under control. Like a river that looks calm on the surface but moves with power beneath. In every great communicator, this duality exists, calm yet firm, gentle yet unwavering. They can sit in the middle of tension without being absorbed by it. They can negotiate, mediate, and lead without losing their emotional grounding. You begin to realize that emotional intelligence isn't about being nice, it's about being effective. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be understanding and still say no. You can forgive and still walk away. True maturity is not emotional compliance, it's emotional clarity. And that clarity begins when you know your values. Values act as emotional anchors. Without them, you drift in every direction the wind of opinion blows. But with them, your emotions have structure. You no longer overreact because you've already decided what matters most. For example, if honesty is your core value, then when someone lies, you don't need to debate whether to confront or ignore. Your response flows from integrity. If peace is your value, you don't chase drama or revenge. If growth is your value, you see failure as feedback, not punishment. Values simplify emotions, they filter your reactions. And once you build this emotional foundation, your communication naturally evolves. You stop listening to respond and start listening to understand. You don't interrupt others just to be heard. You observe tone, intention, and body language. You read what's not being said. You notice the small shifts in energy that reveal what a person truly means. This emotional awareness transforms how you connect with people. You start building deeper relationships because people feel seen and safe around you, and that in turn makes your leadership magnetic. Every great movement, business, or team is built not on authority but on emotional connection. People don't follow titles, they follow trust. They follow how you make them feel. If people feel small around you, they'll resist you. If they feel understood, they'll rise with you. That's the unseen art of emotional influence, and perhaps the most profound part of emotional intelligence is realizing that it's not about control, it's about connection. You're not trying to manipulate how others feel. You're learning to manage how you feel in relation to them. That's the difference between influence and intimidation. Intimidation forces people to shrink. Influence inspires them to expand. So emotional intelligence, when fully matured, is not just personal development, it's social transformation. You begin to carry an energy that heals conflict, inspires creativity, and fosters cooperation. In meetings, your composure sets the tone. In friendships, your empathy deepens understanding. In love, your patience nurtures trust. Everywhere you go, you leave behind peace, because you have peace within. And it's in this peace that true power lives, the kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't prove, doesn't dominate, but simply is. You become a presence that others feel before they even see, not because you demand respect, but because your stillness commands it. This is emotional mastery. It's where intelligence becomes influence, and influence becomes legacy. You stop chasing the world, because now, the world begins to notice you. And that quiet transformation is how emotional intelligence becomes your silent revolution. The truth about emotional intelligence is that it's not a switch you turn on once. It's a lifelong practice. Every new challenge tests your awareness. Every disappointment tests your patience, and every success tests your humility. Growth never ends. It only deepens. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you no longer feel pain, anger, or insecurity. It means you stop letting those emotions define your decisions. You begin to see emotions as messengers, not dictators. Each feeling brings a lesson, and the more you listen with maturity, the more wisdom you harvest from every experience. Think about how different life feels when you approach it with emotional awareness. Instead of reacting to every difficulty, you begin responding with calm purpose. Instead of blaming others, you take accountability. Instead of fighting circumstances, you learn to work with them. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift changes everything. Suddenly, challenges are no longer roadblocks. They're road signs, guiding you toward greater self-understanding. Failure becomes feedback. Criticism becomes perspective. Even rejection turns into redirection. You realize that life isn't trying to break you, it's trying to build you. And emotional intelligence becomes the lens that reveals that truth. In business and in leadership, this perspective is invaluable. You stop seeing obstacles as personal attacks, and instead, you view them as opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more strategic. The emotionally intelligent leader doesn't chase comfort. They pursue clarity. They know that the fastest way to mastery is through discomfort, because discomfort is data. It shows you where your growth is waiting. The moment you begin using emotions as data, you rise above average performers. Most people are slaves to their moods. They wake up hopeful and productive one day, then frustrated and scattered the next. But emotional intelligence gives you consistency, a rare quality in a world that rewards speed but forgets steadiness. Consistency is magnetic. People may not always remember your ideas, but they'll remember how steady you were when everyone else was panicking. They'll remember that you didn't crumble when things went wrong, and that memory becomes your brand. That's how emotional intelligence translates into business impact, not through flashy speeches or forced charisma, but through reliability, through the quiet power of emotional constancy. Imagine being that person in a room full of uncertainty, the one whose voice brings order to chaos, whose calm steadies others, whose empathy unlocks collaboration. That's leadership beyond titles. It's leadership by energy, because energy is contagious. And emotional intelligence helps you become intentional about the energy you spread. When you walk into a room carrying gratitude, composure, and curiosity, you shift the atmosphere without saying a word. Your emotional frequency affects others subconsciously. That's why emotionally mature people become natural influencers, not because they manipulate, but because they elevate. To reach that level, you must begin practicing emotional hygiene, the daily discipline of clearing negative emotions before they accumulate. Just as you wouldn't go days without cleaning your body, you can't afford to go days without cleansing your mind and heart. Reflect each evening. What emotion dominated me today? If it was frustration, where did it begin? What story fueled it? What expectation did it violate? These questions aren't meant to judge you, they're meant to free you. Awareness dissolves emotional buildup. Meditation, journaling, prayer, or simply sitting quietly in gratitude can reset your inner system. Emotional hygiene keeps you clear, calm, and connected to your purpose. It prevents resentment, envy, or exhaustion from quietly corroding your inner peace. When you manage your emotional hygiene consistently, you also become better at reading others, because your own emotional clutter no longer distorts your perception. You see people more clearly. You recognize their fears, their projections, their unspoken needs, and instead of reacting, you respond with empathy. Empathy is one of the most misunderstood aspects of emotional intelligence. It's not about agreeing with everyone or absorbing their pain. It's about understanding where they're coming from, without losing where you stand. The most emotionally intelligent leaders listen without judgment, but lead with conviction. They can understand another's perspective while still honoring their own truth. That balance is what creates mutual respect. When empathy meets boundaries, influence becomes healthy. You no longer feel responsible for everyone's emotions. You learn to care deeply without caring unnecessarily. That's emotional maturity, the wisdom to hold compassion in one hand and self-respect in the other. With time, this maturity seeps into your communication style. You become a better listener, speaker, and negotiator. You begin speaking not to impress, but to express. You stop reacting impulsively to criticism because you realize that not all feedback is truth. Some of it is projection. You start discerning which voices deserve your energy and which only distract you from your mission. That discernment is emotional intelligence in action. The more you develop it, the more your external world aligns with your internal peace. You attract people who match your vibration, clients who value honesty, colleagues who thrive on respect, and friends who nurture your growth. You stop chasing relationships that drain you because you now recognize the emotional cost of staying in the wrong environment. Emotional intelligence is what allows you to say no without guilt and yes without fear. It teaches you that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding. In the world of business, this translates to better teamwork, clearer leadership, and a stronger reputation. Teams led by emotionally intelligent individuals perform better, not because they avoid conflict, but because they resolve it quickly and fairly. They don't suppress emotion, they channel it into creativity and progress. And beyond all strategy and systems, people remember how you made them feel. They remember whether your leadership felt safe, whether your feedback built them, whether your decisions inspired trust. Emotional intelligence builds that emotional memory in people's minds. That's what makes you unforgettable in business. Not the pitch, not the product, not the logo, but the emotional resonance you leave behind. Every great brand, every great leader, and every lasting legacy shares this in common: emotional connection. It's what makes a customer loyal, an employee committed, and a follower inspired. Emotional intelligence is the invisible architecture behind it all. So when you start viewing business not as a battlefield, but as an ecosystem of emotions, everything changes. You start managing energy, not just effort. You focus on alignment, not just achievement. You create momentum, not burnout. This is the hidden secret of emotionally intelligent success. You win, but you win peacefully. You grow, but you grow gracefully. The world might move fast, but you move with intention. And that difference, that steady grace, makes you unstoppable. There's a moment, somewhere along your journey, when you realize that all the effort, the learning, the reflection, it was never just about mastering emotions for business. It was about mastering life itself. You begin to see that every negotiation, every relationship, every difficult decision was really a mirror, reflecting your inner world back at you. Emotional intelligence doesn't just change what you do, it transforms who you are. Because the deeper truth is this: success without emotional maturity is fragile. It can crumble the moment pressure rises or ego inflates. But success built on inner peace endures. It's not shaken by criticism, nor inflated by praise. It's steady, balanced, rooted. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not invincibility, but alignment. You stop chasing validation and start chasing purpose. You stop competing and start creating. You realize that emotional intelligence is not a tool for advantage. It's a pathway to authenticity. In business, that authenticity is magnetic. People crave realness. They're drawn to those who are grounded, who communicate with empathy, who make them feel valued. Emotional intelligence becomes your silent advantage, because it builds what money can't buy: connection. And connection is the heartbeat of influence. When you walk into a room with authentic presence, people feel it. You don't have to demand attention, your energy earns it. You don't have to dominate the conversation, your calm confidence commands it. You no longer measure yourself by comparison, because you've learned that emotional intelligence teaches contentment without complacency. You can be ambitious without being anxious. You can be confident without arrogance. You can lead without control. This balance is the sweet spot where great leaders live. It's the difference between forcing success and flowing into it. When you move through the world with emotional maturity, even your setbacks start serving you. You no longer panic when things fall apart. You pause, breathe, and rebuild with wisdom, because you've been through emotional storms before, and now you trust your resilience. You know that storms don't destroy strong trees, they deepen their roots, and that's what emotional intelligence does. It deepens your roots. It anchors you in truth, in empathy, in awareness. It teaches you that emotions are not enemies, but guides. That anger shows where your boundaries were crossed. That sadness shows where love once lived. That fear shows where growth is waiting. When you learn to listen to emotions without being ruled by them, you unlock emotional freedom. Freedom from reactivity, freedom from insecurity, freedom from self-sabotage. This freedom changes how you move through the world. You no longer rush to prove yourself. You no longer over-explain. You no longer chase recognition, because you've found self-recognition, the quiet joy of knowing who you are and what you bring. That kind of self-awareness radiates peace. And peace, in a noisy world, is power. People begin to seek your presence, not because you fix their problems, but because you remind them that calm still exists. You become a mirror of possibility, proof that success doesn't have to mean stress, that leadership doesn't have to mean ego, and that achievement can coexist with peace. And this is where emotional intelligence transcends business. It becomes spiritual intelligence, because once you've mastered how to feel, you begin mastering how to be. You no longer react to the outer world, you respond from the inner world. You make decisions not from fear, but from clarity. You speak not to impress, but to express truth. You build not just wealth, but well-being. In this higher dimension of awareness, everything you touch begins to align with your peace. Opportunities flow more naturally, because you've stopped resisting the rhythm of life. You've become adaptable, not because you lack conviction, but because you trust process over perfection. That trust is what carries you through seasons of uncertainty. Emotional intelligence gives you emotional endurance. While others break under pressure, you bend and return stronger. You understand that no emotion is final, that every wave of stress, anxiety, or sadness passes when met with patience and compassion. Patience becomes your secret weapon. The ability to stay calm when others rush gives you the advantage of seeing clearly. Emotional maturity slows down your reactions so that your wisdom can catch up. You learn to pause between trigger and response, that sacred gap where power lives. In that pause you choose your future. Every pause is a decision point. Do I react or respond? Do I defend or understand? Do I fight or flow? And with practice you start choosing peace more often. This is what unstoppable really means. It's not that life stops testing you, it's that your peace stops depending on circumstances. You move with grace through chaos, because your foundation is internal. When you reach this level of emotional intelligence, you stop fearing change. You start collaborating with it. You stop resisting endings, because you understand their openings in disguise. You stop running from discomfort, because you see that discomfort is divine instruction. Every emotionally intelligent person eventually learns this truth. Life is not about controlling everything, but about mastering yourself in everything. That mastery makes you magnetic, not just in business, but in every space you occupy. People feel safer around you, because you are safe with yourself. You no longer project insecurity, or compete for attention. You simply shine from authenticity, and from that authenticity, you begin to influence without effort. You speak softly, but impact deeply. You create harmony instead of noise. You elevate people instead of overpowering them. You leave every place and person better than you found them, and that ultimately becomes your legacy. Because success fades, achievements change, but emotional impact endures. The people who once worked with you will remember not just your skills but your presence, the calm in your tone, the kindness in your decisions, the steadiness you brought in chaos. That's the invisible inheritance of emotional intelligence. It multiplies long after you're gone, and when you finally reflect on your journey, you realize that the goal was never to become perfect. It was to become peaceful, peaceful in your thoughts, peaceful in your emotions, peaceful in your work, peaceful in your purpose. You stop seeking balance and start embodying it. You wake up with gratitude instead of anxiety. You walk through your day with awareness instead of autopilot. You end your night with reflection instead of regret. You live on purpose, not in reaction. And that's where life begins to feel different. Not easier, but clearer. Not faster, but deeper. You start hearing yourself more. Not the noise, not the fear, not the opinions, just you. You begin living from the inside out, not the outside in. That is emotional intelligence. That is freedom. That is power. And when you carry that presence into business, leadership, and daily life, nothing can stop you, because now your power no longer depends on position, praise, or performance. It lives within you. You are the calm in every storm. You are the clarity in every confusion. You are the strength that doesn't shout but transforms. That's what it means to be unstoppable.